Hello, everyone, and welcome to Season 2 of Passionate People and Preposterous Peeves. I'm your host, Ike, and before you get too sucked in to this awesome interview, do us both a favor and like, subscribe, and share this amazing piece of entertainment, because I am here with the one, the only, Ian! Say hello, Ian.
Hello, thank you. Oh, that's way too much applause. Thank you. All right.
Yeah, take it easy, studio audience.
Yeah,
Gosh.
take it easy.
Gotta make them feel comfortable before we freak them out.
Yeah.
Speaking of being comfortable, what's your favorite movie line that you like to quote apropos of nothing?
Oh, favorite movie line that I like to quote. Oh. I think I don't have a movie line, but I have, if this counts like an SNL skit, I always, legitimately my favorite performance from Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, and that's because he's really good in this skit. It's about this like African drug that's you really shouldn't have, and he just says it works, and like he says it like so menacingly, and it's a great skit. So that's sometimes I just see something and I just go,
It works.
it works. That or True Grit, that didn't pan out from Grit is another one. So those two quotes I use frequently.
Those are great.
Yeah.
Speaking of movies, what was your first date movie?
My first date movie. So like my very first date with like ever, right?
Your very first date, the first time you had a first date movie.
Oh man. This will sound crazy, but it was The Avengers in theaters.
It's a good litmus test to check out her nerd card.
Yeah, but it was a double date with a couple other people that we knew, and the movie was great, obviously. At the time, it was like, whoa, like all of these superheroes all at once.
It's too much
We can never get tired of this.
Yeah.
Oops. It was a fun movie, and yeah, I think if I were to go back, I would I don't know, like it to be maybe slightly more romantic.
Cut out the other the other half of the bicycle.
Yeah, well, it's just I just think just a little more romantic. Like my now wife, that just happened this year.
Mm-hmm.
Got married. Our first date movie was Up, and I feel like that's a good like I think that's a good like it is romantic, but it's still about other things,
Sure.
But it is, but yeah, that was like our first, and I think that's it's a solid one. Might be a little overboard for others, but
Yeah.
I don't know. You had a reaction, obviously.
Well, I mean, just because
what do you
Up
think?
starts so hard, it starts so beautiful and then gets melancholy as hell for like 10 minutes. Like, man, it's very much for some people, it is like a break point where it's just like they don't check out, but like it really, takes them down a bit. But if it doesn't, maybe it's a good one of those litmus tests where you can like, check their appreciation for film or their genre preferences.
I guess that's the thing I never really dealt with first dates, is that people who I dated with I've known for a good amount of time. So it's not like
yeah. You
like
know
I
them
have
as a
first date
person.
with someone that So I guess if it was like first date and I don't know them, then yeah, I think Up would maybe be a little
jarring.
especially like they look over to me and I'm just like, oh god, like
yeah, it's a good test if they appreciate a boy with feelings.
yes, a little boy. Yeah. So yeah, Avengers was my first. I like Up too, but again, it's with people who I knew beforehand before dating.
Yeah.
Just, yeah.
All right. So, what's your favorite meal to make just for yourself, assuming cost and time are not relevant factors.
So favorite meal that I can make myself, right? It has to be me.
Yeah, you have to make it for you.
Okay.
But you can, you're borrowing a time machine and Calvin Coolidge's wallet. You've got infinite time and infinite expenses if you prefer.
Yeah, that's hard because I'm not that much of a cook, but I guess I'm torn between um I making a sandwich, but I've made homemade bread before. So,
Ooh.
making the homemade bread, the no knead bread, and then having that on a sandwich, it's really good. Or and to hate to borrow from a previous episode, but I make a good homemade mac and cheese out of an instant pot where you cook the bacon outside, good fatty bacon, you cut it up and mix it in there, and
It does sound delish.
it's really good.
What kind of bread, if you're gonna make a sandwich, what kind of bread we baking?
Oh, it's something called it's from I don't know if you know Binging with Babish
Yep.
or Basic Babish.
I know the Bab Man.
You know the bad man. It's his no knead bread
Okay.
that I make, and so I just make that, and it's a big loaf, so then I just slice up the center, makes big sando.
Sounds tasty. What's the spread on the rest of it? So we got the awesome no knead bread. What kind of meat? What kind of veg? What kind of sauce? We splatter.
Yeah, I would say okay. Um, my wife is she's very environmentally friendly, and so we don't typically have a lot of red meat around.
Mm-hmm.
So when we actually make sandwiches, we use a lot of other things. So right now, I'm actually really digging like Cajun or Chipotle, like chicken or turkey.
Mm-hmm.
Like turkey slices I really do like turkey slices. I'm a personal fan of either provolone or pepper jack on that. Lettuce, onion, red onion. Um, there's like these chipotle pickles that we have. That's like it's pickled in like some other kind of spices. That's really good. And essentially like secret sauce from In-N-Out. There's like a thing at Trader Joe's where they have like this what a awesome sauce or whatever, and
Mm-hmm.
that's really good on the sandwich. And yeah, I would before I would make it, I would maybe butter the bread a little bit and then toast that on like a grill uh, to get that crunchy,
Mm.
toasty
That's rad.
hue to it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Crap. Now
Now
I
I'm
might need
hungry.
to take a
Thanks.
break to go make some bread and have a sandwich. Well, no, there's no good transition there.
Transition.
So, yeah, there's sometimes I find good ones and sometimes I don't. I'm
You're
not finding a
fine.
good one right now. So, what is your favorite non-exercise thing that you have to force yourself to do?
My favorite non-exercise thing that
But that you have to force yourself to do.
um getting gas, like I don't know, like that's fucking expensive, and it's like, why do I drive it's to my work?
Well,
And
it's not
why aren't
something
I
you
paid?
that's not something you enjoy doing though. What's something that you enjoy
Oh,
doing, but you
that I
still have to like,
enjoy. Oh, that I
yeah,
have.
your
Oh my God.
favorite
Okay, my
non-exercise thing.
favorite. Okay, that I have to force my.
Yeah, but it's
Oh my
something you
God,
still have to like, kind of push yourself to accomplish.
Sure. I would say,
There's a small
gosh,
part of me that still hopes you go getting gas, but
yeah,
please don't.
I love it.
It's just so amazing.
It's so good. I
Just
love
pouring
putting in
dead dinosaurs in my
$40.
metal heap.
Yes, for the low price of $45, you too can come back here next week to fill it up again.
Whee!
Um, gosh, I one thing that I enjoy, I guess it doesn't have to be daily.
No.
Okay, I would say making breakfast. I think that's something that I have to force myself to do. But man, when I do it and I want to do it well, I
Pull
learned
out
a
all the stops.
recipe on, I pull out all the stops, I cook some sausage. I take the time to make a really good like soft scrambled eggs.
Use
I
butter
just
or milk?
I do so I don't use milk. That's what I was growing up to do, but now I
Mm-hmm.
use butter. And this is a bit of a controversy, and I didn't know this, but the video that I saw said put in a little bit of salt before you even mix the eggs because it helps
Hmm.
them further unbind the
Oh, interesting.
little chemical components in there. Yeah, I was like, what the? Well, okay. So I was like, I trust you. So I do that, and I constantly stir, and it takes about
Yeah.
3 to 4 minutes, which doesn't sound like a huge amount of time, but when you're talking about eggs, eggs can be done in like 10 seconds.
Just like when you're, taking care of human children, when
Hmm.
you're taking care of egg children, you got to be very attentive so that you can
Very
eat them and they're
attentive,
delicious.
and they're
Otherwise,
and
well, what's the worst? What's the
yeah,
worst?
and they're delicious because I felt like earlier, it's just like, yeah, I like eggs, but it's like, man, do I? Because they cook
Love
really
eggs.
fast, and then you have to eat them super fast because if they get cold, then they're really not good. But it's if you take the
I don't
time,
know. Have
if you
you
take the
had
time to
cold
cook it,
sunny side up eggs that have the runny yolk? That is, oh,
you like
egg
that?
gravy.
All right,
Oh, baby.
all right.
I like it when it's warm too, but when it's cold, it's still, I don't know, it's something about, it's just kind of fun having it be the protein and the sauce. It
Sure.
just does it for me.
Yeah.
But
So I don't know. I think it's that. And when I force
yeah, for
myself,
sure.
like when I force myself to do something, like I've made eggs Benedict with hollandaise sauce. And the hollandaise sauce didn't. It was way too thick, but still, like I looked at that and I was like, God damn, that isn't good. That's. I feel proud. Like I feel good about
That's
it, and then I
awesome.
have it, and you're like, oh my God. But those are usually summer days, or if I wake up really early. So that's when that happens. Because typically I wake up
It's
about
like a mini holiday when you have your hollandaise sauce. It's great.
oh oh
Ah.
e.
Well, moving on from one meal to another, who's someone you've never met, alive or dead, that you'd like to have lunch with?
I think right now, because I feel like the answer changes,
Oh,
based
of
on your
course.
feelings and stuff. Right now, I would say I would love to have lunch with like Conan O'Brien. I think
Maybe be on his podcast.
just like be on his
Talk
podcast,
over
just
a
chilling
no need bread sandwich.
on a no knead bread sandwich. Yeah, I don't know how. I feel like I'd feel too nervous if it was like if I was on the podcast because then I'm like, oh, Sona and oh, Matt Gorley, like even though both of those guys are chill chums.
Yeah.
Um, but I don't know, like having lunch with Conan and just kind of talking, picking his brain because obviously it's like he has tea to spill, but he doesn't. He's too nice of a guy right now to publicly say certain things. So wonder if you get inside that mind, if he does spill that tea. Um, but yeah, and I love his podcasts right now. I mean, he's
Oh, it's really good.
genuinely fun to listen to when he's just having a conversation.
Yeah. It's a
Yeah.
very sweet, interesting, knowledgeable fellow with a great sense of humor. I listened
Yes.
to what was I listening to last night? I listened to one of his recent ones, and it was I listened to I think the Taylor Tomlinson one
Hmm.
most recently, and I was is one love Taylor Tomlinson too. Enjoy Conan. It was really fun to hear how funny and yet sincere. Because I think that's one of the nice things is that he is just like a sweet man, but also loves giving shit. And so he like
Yes.
ping pongs back and forth between saying something that if you weren't friendly before or just as a person, it wouldn't work. But when you are, you can kind of it's kind of fun to
Yeah.
bounce back in
I
between.
I don't think I've ever known someone who's just like talks about how important mental health is while
Hmm.
physically punching you. Like that's Conan. Like he's just
Yeah.
like all the his little
And
bits where he's
having it not be like a kind of managing it to make it both and not like contradictory.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's not like he's like, yeah, you should practice mental health, you like whiny pussy bitch. It's just like he's like, it's like you should really practice mental health because I care about you.
Yes.
And if I'm gonna outlive you, I want it to be, you know, a record worth having. You know, that kind of like jab.
Yeah.
Yeah, just like,
Yes.
I mean, if like I like you can't commit suicide now, I lose the bet, or you know, something like that, where it's just like it's a subtle dig while like showing care. I think it's very, very much his style. It is, to me, tremendous as well.
Totally. Yeah. So yeah, I think Conan O'Brien right now is
So speaking of Conan, were you to go back in time and go on his TV show and didn't want to get bleeped, what would your favorite non-traditional curse word be to use in such a scenario?
All right. Favorite, and I don't want to be bleeped. So I have
it has to be a minced oath, if you will.
yes, I have. So I have a honorable mention here. This is what my dad used to use a lot because I feel like
Okay.
you when you grow up, you have your favorite like replace word. Like later,
Uh-huh.
you're like, oh, like that was fuck.
That was that.
But
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know, but you use this. That's kind of funny. My dad would always use sugar
with a hard S production.
with a hard. I still remember
Sugar.
he almost hit someone at a parking lot, and he was like, sugar. Like it almost took his entire breath to be like, and my dad, he's a very sweet, non-cursing man. So
I can see that vitriol bubbling up at times though, so that is beautiful to know that he does have it, but gets it out in a way that he feel that he, where he's not trying to like damage anybody in his own kind of way,
Yes.
And he doesn't want to curse around his kids because he feels like that's not cool, but he still needs to get that, poison out.
Get that anger. Yeah.
What's your
that's the honorable mention. My current
great honor mention.
Yes, solid honorable mention. My go-to right now is Fudgy the Whale.
Fudgy the Whale.
Fudgy the Whale. And it's almost like my dad. I go Fudgy
hard
the Whale.
Yeah, it's got same with the way your dad says sugar. You know what it's about, word he's about to say.
Yes.
But with Fudgy the Whale, it's like Fudgy. Clear. You get to get enough of that, like, oh man, I wish I knew English grammary words.
Okay,
you get to get that phonetic. You get to get that phonetic release of the beginning of the word that you want to say, while still curbing it with the end, so you're not, the bad teacher, the bad dad, the awkward boyfriend at a family dinner party.
Exactly.
You get to do both.
Exactly. And for me, it's, Fudgy the Whale. Like, for me, it's also just silly. It's like
you
look back and you're kind of making the situation, I don't know, more silly. Or if like someone looks at you, then you
reducing the tension. Yeah. You get to do the best of both worlds. You get to, not bring down the circumstance effect with yours. You get to elevate it, but you also get to, get the exasperation, out.
Exactly. Yeah. Fudgy the Whale.
Fudgy the Whale. Speaking of named fun things. No, that's not a good transition script.
Segue.
What I was trying. I really looked for the spots, and that one did and didn't work. What inanimate object would you be best friends with, do you think, were it sentient? Or at least would you want to be best friends with? Not that you'd need to be or like most likely to be, but what one would you want to be best friends with?
See, that's really hard. And
that's what we do here. We ask the hard questions.
You ask the hard questions. I was toiling around. I think it has to be. I have a and I think we'll get into this a little later, but I have a signed baseball by Willie McCovey, who was a Hall of Famer. Mm-hmm. And that's actually been passed down to me.
Aww.
So for me, it's if that were to come alive and just talk about, just like what was happening in, it was like my uncle and my aunts, and they realized how passionate I am about baseball. And
foreshadowing. Subtle.
Subtle. But Yeah, so it was brought down to me, and I have it in the apartment right now. It's kind of in the living room, so I would love that to be the thing.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
Was it a ball that he just signed, or was it one that like was a like ball of the game? You know, like is what does it have any other significance other than going down through your family and being signed by this fantastic athlete?
No, that's just about it. In fact,
Okay.
it was like it wasn't even part of a game. It was like a financial incentive. There's a thing called McCovey Cove where they
Mm-hmm.
needed like funds for that. So my family donated enough to have like a plaque that is kind of in memoriam for my grandpa Larry, who I never actually met. He passed away when my dad was like 11 or 12. Um, but so they have a little plaque there, and they had a signed ball from Willie McCovey, and they decided that it would be best suited with me. So
Aw, that's sweet.
yeah, yeah, it's very nice.
Do you have a life hack that you'd like to share with the class to make their life
Um,
just a little bit better and or hackier?
uh, a life hack that I would like to teach the rest of my class. Well, I'd like to teach
By class, I mean the people listening to this
the people
podcast.
listening to this. Well, if speaking of like life hack for classes, it's like, if any one of you or any of you or all of you are parents, you should read like classroom management stuff because that would help us teachers. That reminds me. But my life hack is my life hack would be an instant pot. That's my that's my life hack. If you don't have an instant pot, I would recommend it. I'm not that much of a cook, but I use the instant pot, and I have like 6 to 8 recipes that I can go through, and I just throw them all in this pot, and it's easy cleaning. It makes big portions, um, pretty easy to use, and
Yeah.
very quick. Like white rice is done in 5 minutes. I've done pasta in like 5 or 6 minutes. That's like a pound of pasta.
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty fast, and I really like that laundry example, but I think this is kind of like my laundry example where I can just have it and be done fast, or
Yeah.
it also acts as a slow cooker as well. So it's like, my wife would make curry, and she would just put everything in there and have it slow cook, and then it's ready for dinner. So it's also, I don't know, it's versatile too. That's my life hack. Get
This
get enough
this
money.
episode was brought to you by
Yeah.
Instabrands.
Yes.
If you were a condiment, which do you think you'd be?
Bio condiment. Not mustard. Um,
All
I
right, we're narrowing this
I will
down.
I so let me share a quick story. That I never put mustard on anything. I can only deal with mustard if it's like mixed with a lot of other things, like deviled eggs apparently has mustard, and like special sauce has mustard in it, but I can't taste it. But the reason why I can't was second grade. I remember being in this like Catholic like Thursday evening school for like kids, and I remember I would always sit right behind this kid who smelled like mustard the entire like 9 months. Every week, I would sit behind this kid that smelled like mustard. So anytime I smell mustard, I just gag. It's terrible. Um, but if I were a
Yeah.
condiment, I think I think I would be. I'm gonna say ketchup because about maybe 70% of the time during the summer, I am red, like ketchup. You can personally vouch for this. I can be in a pool for like 45 minutes and then turn out lobster red. Like,
I think that's just because you're in water, your natural habitat, and you just become your traditional self.
yes.
But yes, I can confirm
Yeah.
that indeed.
Part crustacean, I guess. Expose here on Ike's show.
Passionate people and preposterous peeves and crustaceans. What's
Yes.
a job that at some point in your life you wanted to pursue, but are very glad you didn't get or chase after?
Um, I think I'm gonna have to go with music teacher. Uh,
Interesting.
yeah, I got an undergrad with I got a bachelor's in music. I have always wanted to be a music teacher up until probably the last year of college, and even then I was still trying to sell myself that that was great.
Mm-hmm.
I'm glad I didn't. I really got burned out from music. I had a teacher that I was not very fond of and worked me to the bone and made music not fun at all.
Oh
To
no.
play or to really um yeah, to really play essentially. And that was really sad. But with it took I think subbing I about I think 3 or 4 times in of subbing to be like, I really like substituting with, you know, little kids and you can mold them and you can really help them out for where they are. And high school kids scare me now. They are, I just feel like I will be continually like out of date, out of references, and not and I don't know how I would deal with kids of that age. I don't know. It's I don't know, it's a tough age. I think middle school is the worst, you know what I mean? But I think high school is also pretty tough.
Hmm.
I don't know, when you look back at your high school, you had a lot of ups, but then you probably had a lot of downs.
Right.
And I commend anyone who is a junior high school teacher because I think back, it's like I hated myself during that time. I would also hate my students. So like everyone hates you, including yourself. It's a sugar time to be alive. Are those ages?
Right.
Um, yeah,
That's a good way of putting it.
yeah. So music teacher, I guess.
Yeah. Did you ever like sub for any music classes and like realize that, or was it just from that professor and doing music so long that you're like, you know what, I kind of just this was better, or was it that like you ever had experiences like subbing music where it was like, oh, I'm glad that I dodged this, or is it just the benefit of teaching? Am I correct in saying you teach like sixth grade or K through six somewhere in there?
I teach first through I will now this year teach K through 5.
Okay.
Um, and that's a really good question. I did not substitute for music classes. I wasn't that passionate. I was burned out from music
Mm-hmm.
through college, but then I substituted for 8th grade, and I was like, this, and it was a half day. Okay, I let's be real, it was a half day. I had to come in at like 9:30.
Mm-hmm.
Class was done at 12:30. It was 3 hours. I barely made it out alive. It was ridiculous. I could not handle I don't know, the sassiness, the talking back, the excuses. I had a student who like tried to leave 2 minutes early. And I'm like, what are you doing? How is this productive? You're on the
Yeah.
bus, right? The bus is going to be here when you
Uh,
get out. Like, what? And it's not going to
yeah.
leave earlier. It's not going
Yeah.
to be
Just
like,
because J.
oh, you're
Jonah
here
Jameson's on
early?
it. Yeah.
I'll take it directly to you, and here's $10,000 for doing something. No, like that. What the? Oh God! So when I was done, I was like, okay, yeah, that's the latest I'll go. In fact, subtract 2 years. That's the oldest I'll go. So
Yeah. All right. Well, glad you found your bliss and
yes.
dodged that shit heap. Another thing, what am I trying to do here? Screw it.
Segway.
All right, I'm gonna give
All right.
you a hypothetical. You're going out to a party and you want to look extra. Other than your normal garb, what accessory do you add to your ensemble?
Ooh. Um. hat. Definitely a hat. The reason is I want to hide uh, my huge. I don't even know if it's a widow's peak anymore. It's full on. It's getting bad up there.
You're getting
So
Cro-Magnon up on this
I am.
MFR?
It's really, yeah. It's getting. It's really, yeah. It's really not good. But I have a good amount of like curly hair like around the area, like around my ears and stuff. So it's like if I can hide the bald spot, people could still at least see like my curly hair and be like, oh, um, I don't know. But yeah,
You're going early Bozo the Clown.
early Bozo the Clown. Yeah, I mean that is
Free
I mean,
cosplay. What's better?
what? What is it? What?
Free cosplay. What could be
Yeah,
better?
yeah, exactly. I honestly did look like was it Curly from Three
Yeah.
Stooges? Like I am getting there. It's I am really balding on the sides, but my hair on the on or up to my forehead. I'm gonna have mega forehead, but like my sides are still pretty curly. So it's
Yeah.
you
Just
know
gotta do some amateur boxing and learn how to play the violin. You're all set.
there you go.
What life lesson do you wish you learned sooner?
Um, I think my life lesson that I wish I learned sooner, and I wish I could still learn, I guess, is not everyone is going to like you. You can be the best possible version of yourself, and people will still not like you for
Yeah.
some weird reason. And it's been very healthy looking back and being like, I was a complete jerk or asshole at this point in time, and I understand where these people are coming from, and I understand if they um don't like want to be forgiven or if they just want to move on. I
Mm-hmm.
found, I had this whole like, oh, everyone's got to like me. Everyone's got to like me, and
Mm-hmm.
that's just not going to happen. Especially when you're growing up because man, you know what I mean? You're
Mm-hmm.
really trying to find yourself. So I think not stressing out about who you are and being way too stressed about how other people think of you. And that's still something I'm going through, right?
Yeah.
I think in any kind of career or profession, but especially teaching, you go about like, oh, I could have done that lesson better. Oh, I could have done this. I could have, I should have done this so that they can further out this. I hope, my teachers or my principal think this is fine and I'm doing a good enough job. I hope that, but it's I have to remind myself that I'm still learning and I could still work on things, but don't over, I don't know, don't over stress it. Not everyone's going to like you or like what you do, and that's
Mm-hmm.
okay.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a great, you reminded me, oddly enough, there's this awesome episode of the fantastic, like, late 90s, early 2000s, just banger of a TV show, Recess.
Oh, yeah.
And there's this episode where the main character, TJ, who's the affable leader,
Yes.
super funny, quick witted, nice. And I don't remember if it's his mission or something like that, but he wants to. And there's an episode where everybody liking him is paramount, and he finds this kid who doesn't hate him. Like he's not wrong to him. He just
Yeah.
doesn't like him, and it just like bothers him to his core until like the end of the episode. And the best part, if I remember correctly, and I hope I do, because my understanding, if I remember correctly, is that he doesn't change the kid's mind. He realizes something about himself and just grows as a person. It's not that he accomplishes his goal and the kid likes him. It's that he's like, it doesn't matter. I don't, this doesn't do anything for me. I don't need that.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. And Recess is great. I actually every few
Highly
years, like my
recommend going
my
back and watching a season or two. Yeah.
my family actually watches Recess Schools Out just every so often because the soundtrack is
Sweet.
like pretty good and the plot's like laughable enough, but it's still, I don't know, it's still got some good jokes in there, and it's the characters are just, I don't know, they're kids, and they're
kids.
Great. They knew how to write kids, I think.
No, they knew how to write kids, but they also knew how to write kids that were like intelligent as opposed to stupid. So you get like the through line of childhood and like adult logic. But also, I think one of the reasons it's so timeless is because they made it about a circumstance that is unlikely to change anytime in our lifetime, which is going to school and being like, like dealing with that circumstance that everybody can relate to and trying not to make it like, they made it mildly topical, but they wisely never used, from what I recall of watching the show, they never used any like stuff in the real world. They kind of like, they made up there's an episode that has to do with cards, and they just make up a card game. They don't make it Yu-Gi-Oh, they don't make it Pokemon, they don't make it whatever. They literally make it this different game so that it's like a stand-in for whatever is the, TCG of the time, or the past, whatever pastime kids are into that involves that kind of same circumstance. It supersedes and can live on. Or if you make it something that did exist, or define it so thoroughly that it's like another game, it kind of loses its timelessness, which I think was really smart.
Yeah.
Speaking of timelessness, insert the segue sound there, baby. Who would you want to play in a movie of your life? You can pick the time period or, general age of the character as well, if you like to get into the nitty gritty.
I honestly have no idea. I was looking, and it's funny because I'm getting my dad gene in me, where my dad can like look at someone on a show and be like, "Oh, that's this actor who was in this show," and like he can do the same thing with voices. Like he can like listen to be like, it's like, "Oh, I think that's this." I remember he was in a different room, and we were watching an episode. My brother and I were watching an episode of Steven Universe, and if you haven't seen it, I
highly recommend.
Highly recommend. Fantastic show. But he was listening to Sour Cream, and Sour Cream has like 4 seconds of dialogue, and he was like, "I think that's this actor from this show," and I'm like, "From Just Shoot Me," and I'm like, "What kind of references?" And then I look it up. I'm like, "Oh my
deep
god,
cut.
Deep cut." But I don't have an actor that I don't know would play. I think my timeline though would be like around retirement age, because I love like Mr. Holland's Opus. How he kind
showing
of goes
all the effects that he's
all the effects of the kids, minus that whole I hated that whole like side quest of high school the high schooler like kind of crushing on him, and I'm like, God, this is so creepy. Like, yikes. Other than that, that whole like he doesn't understand or realize like how many people have affected him. I like those kind of pieces.
And so also that, like, if I remember correctly in the movie, it's another one of those accepting your circumstance and not looking at what could have been, but what you did do, and appreciating not your, I guess, your greatness, but more just appreciating yourself and not looking at what you didn't do. Like, because if I remember correctly, he's been working on this, this
Opus.
Musical tour de force.
Yeah.
And it doesn't really get actualized, or not to the degree that he hoped. And it kind of brings him down a bit. But then all the students that he's taught made a difference to kind of, collectively tell him what great things that he like quite literally is responsible for and did. And he gets to see that his body of work wasn't this music that he really wanted to create, but rather all these people that he changed for the better.
Yes, he, like, in the beginning, he's like, I'll teach for like 3 or 4 years until I get a really like banging this opus that I have, and then I'll and of course, like, he decides to not do that, and he does this. I think he has a bit of like having his cake and eating it too, because he realizes how great he's teaching, and then he actually conducts his opus at the very end.
Oh yeah, that's right. But with it's like all the students that he taught,
all the students, which is pretty. That's pretty chill.
Yeah. Good culmination.
Yes. So. Yeah.
I think I've got a pitch for you. Okay, you're wanting to do it around retirement age.
Yes.
I get Sam Jackson vibes from you. I think Samuel L. could just really, He could really give your essence to screen.
You know what I wouldn't want more of right now is Samuel L. Jackson saying "Fudgy the Whale," like Mother
I can
Fudgy the
see him.
Whale.
I can see him selling it. You know, I think that would really play on screen.
Oh, good. Yes.
Speaking of silly things that are yet somehow just oh so delectable, what poor man luxury do you still enjoy to this day?
Ooh, I think. Oh, it's got to be like ramen. It's got to be ramen.
Top
I
ramen.
mean, yeah,
Do you prefer cup of noodle or top ramen? What's
top
your
ramen.
top ramen?
I've
All
had
right.
cup of noodles, and the thing is,
It's the same company though, right?
it's the same
Well, they're both.
company, but it's there's different things in it, and
Yeah, yeah. Well,
yeah, I like
I'm a
top ramen
lazy
more.
SOB, so I like being able to just like pour it, sit it, forget it.
Yeah,
But
sure.
I do agree that top ramen is way better. You it's more of a meal and less of a like
Yes, it's more
accidental
of a
mistake.
meal. Yeah, I mean, I'm not
Do
the
you go the full nine? Do you put an egg in it? Like
Oh, don't put an
how
egg in it.
much do you dress up this delicious shit pile?
Absolutely bare bones.
Nice.
I take it out of the toilet, do nothing to it, and I eat it. I eat the salt bomb, just as it
Do
is.
you have are you one of the people that depending upon time circumstance and just where you're at that you will just open it and eat it like it's a nutritious like Cliff Bar?
You know, I didn't know that this was a thing until I actually played like Undertale. Now, which for those who don't know, there's a chance for you to heat instant noodles, but if you heat them up, they're like a health of 2. But if you eat them dry, it's like a health of 60. So it's it's like clearly his personal preference, and I was like, I had
Yeah,
no idea. I had
that's
no
so
idea.
funny.
So I didn't know that you could do it. I haven't done it yet though. So I
My
don't know.
favorite is that I was out at lunch at some place, got plenty of time. There's like I don't even remember if there's a kitchen where we were eating. This guy pulls up with a thing of ramen, undoes it, had a little uh like container saucepan thing, pours water, mixes the little flavor packet and dips it in and bites it off raw. So he's doing like his own like quasi nutritious savory like uh didgeridoo or whatever where he's just like dip
Oh, oh my
dip.
gosh.
It was amazing. It was so sophisticated and yet so like dollar store at the same time. I just
Yeah.
loved it.
Wow.
Good times. Ah, high school. What media, whether it be book, graphic novel, TV show, or movie, have you been putting off that is next on your to consume list that you just can't wait to break open?
Oh, gosh, that's tough. Um,
If it's like if it's a tie, you can feel free to list more than one. I'll allow it.
I'll allow it. Um, wow.
Sustained.
Yes.
I
Um,
think that's what that means in legalese.
yeah. Uh, or is it overruled? Anyway, I think it's gotta be. I think it's gonna be season 3 of Kipo. Is
Kipo.
Kipo.
What is Kipo?
Kipo is on Netflix. It's an animated show. It's this very interesting, like, humans are in the underground because animals have, like, mutated to become extremely big and dangerous. And it's this very interesting um, world where, like, the first thing is this girl, Kipo, who's like, oh gosh, I'm gonna be really bad with age. Somewhere between 13 and 35. No, I'm joking. 13 to like 16. Like, teenage. She just kind of, through some circumstances, was pushed out of the underground through like some flooding and then wasn't able to come back in. So then has to like survive this world And apparently,
Mm-hmm.
like, certain animals have their own, like, factions and gangs, um,
As they do in real life, of
as they do
course.
in real life. Yes. Um, and I don't know. It's a very interesting concept, right?
Mm-hmm.
It does a really good job with world building, and the plot is very interesting right now. And we finished season 2 because we were watching with someone, and we saw season 3, episode 1, but we've had so many, like, it's like a 20-minute show, and we have so many, like, 20-minute things right now. We have, like, we still haven't seen Obi-Wan yet. We're halfway through Obi-Wan. We are through, like, Only Murders in the Building. We're watching Harley Quinn. So we got, like, a lot of, like,
Mm-hmm.
half-hour things, to kind of
You're burning through
spend.
you're burning through as many as you can before your summer's over, I expect.
Yeah. Well, and kind of also not, because half-hour shows, it's more like we're watching movies right now and putting half hours on the
Mm.
side because,
Yeah, because those are like more feasible to do during the school year.
yes, and during, like, the school days. Whereas,
Give
yeah,
yourself a nice 30-minute
yeah, 30
siesta, just
minute.
watch a little kipo. Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
Sweet.
not at work. That would
That would be outrageous,
that
of
would be.
course.
Well, I actually can't log in to certain things because you have your own email, and then they check. They have to be really detailed on what people look at, because of course kids are growing up, and by fifth grade they know certain, like, porn sites and how to look up certain things. So it's like, okay,
Kids these days, I tell you.
no, like, it's crazy. I remember subbing, and there was a dance, and there was just a student who was kind of like, who was overhearing and being like, "Yeah, I'm good with having sex." And it's like,
In
okay,
fifth grade.
like, in fifth grade, and it's like, guys, no, like,
Yeah.
you don't even know what you're talking about, but you're still
Yeah.
kind of saying anyway.
You're saying the cool words.
Yeah, you're
Yeah.
saying the cool words while scaring everyone.
Scaring all the adults. With that tasty nugget, we're going to throw it to commercial break. But before we do, if you could have listeners of this podcast hear one song of your choosing, which would it be?
So yeah, I had a hard time going through this, but I decided to go with "Melancholy Hill" by the Gorillas. It's not necessarily the words, but it's got a really good beat, and
Them vibes, though.
yes, really good vibes. And Gorillas are great. And I don't know, when I grew up, I was always listening to what my parents had on, which were
Mm.
great stuff. But I just
Did a
remember
good
a few
job, Mom
years
and Dad.
Um, but a few years ago, I just remember, like, exploring my own kind of music, and I was like, "This is really nice." And that was just one of the very first ones. And I took a pause on, like, finding my music because we've talked earlier about my passion for music, and I'm typically someone who's really comfortable with something that works well. And so it's like I find a few songs, and I'm like, "Cool, I'm gonna listen to this until I'm, like, absolutely sick of it." And then I'll find something else because I need something else.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, that Melancholy Hill by the Gorillas.
Awesome. And with that, we're going to throw it to our first break. Feel free to stick around and enjoy this totally real commercial, or take a minute to enjoy Melancholy Hill by Gorillaz. Or if you really wanted to hear a song from a previous episode, check out the playlist on Spotify, Passionate People and Preposterous Peeves Podcast Song Rex. It's a long title, I know. Don't worry, there's a link in the description. Either way, see you in a jiffy. Do you need 100 pounds of butter? Come on down to Company Street Company. What if I need 30 gallons of olive oil? Come on down to Company Street Company. But what if I just want one flatless bird roasted for a reasonable price? Come on down to Company Street Company. Okay, but... Just come on down to Company Street Company. We have everything for a better price. Free snacks, and employees who don't want to kill themselves, or you, because we treat them like fucking human beings. Yeah, but... Yup. Even... Just get your ass down to Company Street Company, where the only sketchy thing we've ever done is enable frozen orange juice hoarders. Welcome back, everybody. So I find myself here with Ian. Ian, what is your passion that you've brought with you today that you totally didn't forecast earlier?
Yes, this is the first time. No foreshadowing whatsoever. It is baseball. Baseball is my passion, and I think I'll get into it. But go ahead and ask your question. Sorry, but baseball is.
Oh, all right. When did you what aspect of baseball? Because there are many.
Yeah, there's a lot of. I really like. Gosh, there's a lot of aspects of baseball. I do really like watching it. I do follow a team. I even I actually even do scorecards. So when I go to a baseball game, I actually bring a scorecard with me and I record the game. I really enjoy that. And I even have, this is just how passionate. It was funny because I was talking to my wife and I was like, "What's my passion?" And she was like, "Baseball." I'm like, "Oh yeah, yes, yeah, actually." I also have a fantasy baseball team, so it's like that kind of like extra level of, I don't know,
Getting your full baseball
nerdiness.
nerddom on, yeah.
Yes.
Who was your first pick this season for your fantasy baseball team?
My first pick was, I believe, Vladimir. No, it was Juan Soto. Juan Soto was my first pick, and then in the second round, I got Vladimir Guerrero Jr., which was really good.
How are you doing in your league thus far?
We are currently in the playoffs, and I am the number one
Hey,
seed. So I'm facing
hey!
off the number four seed right now, and I am currently leading. We have it based on categories. I'm currently winning 9-1 right now, so
Jeez,
it's looking good.
that's strong. Keep it
Yes,
up. Uh, is it how many years is this your first year doing it, or how constantly do you fantasy baseball?
I've done fantasy baseball uh fully. This is my second time. I've sometimes entered it, and like the drafting is honestly the funnest part, which really
Oh,
sucks
of
because it's
course.
like the first thing. You're like, wow, I got this player. Like, and you still look
Yeah.
back on it and you're like, wow, like this pick was really good for that year. I still remember I was in a draft where there was 40 rounds, which is way too many rounds. But on my 40th round, I picked a person named Aaron Judge, and he is now a superstar. But I picked him on his
Sweet.
rookie season, 40th round,
Awesome.
and he mashed like 35 home runs that season. And so I was like, hell yeah. The rest of my picks were awful, and I gave up halfway through the season because I didn't, you
Yeah.
know. Um, but I still was like, hey, I'm proud of that. So this is my second like full time through. Like I really
Sweet.
pay attention throughout all of it. But I think
That's
my fifth
awesome.
or sixth time drafting and stuff. So
So when it comes to a more normal baseball experience, do you have a team or players that you are big fans of?
I'm not like big fans of players. I think I'm more of a team guy. I will still look at a player and be like, well, he's a nice guy. You hope like
Mm-hmm.
you hope he has a great career whether he's on your team or not. Like there's
Yeah.
always that. Um, but my team is the Giants. My
Whoop
dad
whoop.
grew up. Uh, he was raised essentially in San Jose, so he
Mm-hmm.
grew up a Giants fan. My grandpa and my mom's side actually moved from Boston to San Jose the same year the Giants moved from New York to San
Oh,
Francisco. So then
wild.
he was like, I want to be a fan of of this team because they moved the
Mm-hmm.
same year that we moved. So
It's
it's kind of
destiny.
both descendants. And of course,
Yeah.
growing up, I grew up in South Central California. I'll say that Bakersfield, because some people call it Southern California. I'm like, well, we're in the Central Valley. Someone called
Yeah, I
Bakersfield North LA, and I was like, what
it's a bit of a stretch,
the
but
fudge either
I can
way?
kind of see that. I absolutely agree with the South Central thing. I'm really tired of the way so much of California refers to itself. Like LA's definitely South California.
Yes.
It's like no debating about it. I think North Central is completely, or like the how'd you put it again? Sorry, I think I jumbled that in my brain.
I said South Central.
South Central, I think, is a great way to put it because it is a bit farther north. So calling it South is a bit, it's not disingenuous, but it's more apt and more accurate. My big hang up is when Santa Cruz has the audacity to call themselves NorCal. Literally in the bottom half of the state, you're more likely to hit the Mexican border than you are the Oregon border driving wise. It is faster to get to Mexico than it is to get out of the state going north.
I think that's tough because it's like you call it.
I don't call SF NorCal either. I call it Central. I will fight people on this.
So I think that's the thing. I think you're more of a literalist, right? Like you look at the literal map and you're like, you're
geographically,
you are.
Yeah. Well, like part of it is I lived in Humboldt County, which is 6 hours north of the Bay Area, and you guys call yourself North. We're 6 hours, and we still have an hour and a half to the Oregon border. It's not like we're almost Oregon.
I think
there is a long way from Humboldt to Oregon border, and just like be like, oh yeah, we're NorCal. No, you're not. You're not by a lot. You're Central. That's fine. You can be the heart of Cali if you want to, like, don't, like, settle for Central if that, like, isn't, as conducive to, like, the North and South aspect. If you want to call yourself the heart, the center of Cali, do that, NorCal. Get the fuck off your high horse. This is bullshit.
I think people in San Francisco think that you're, like, Southern Oregon.
They probably do.
They just
and to be fair, there's not many of us. Like, if you look at population distribution, they wanted to call themselves the North, that's fine, but that's not where that came from.
Yeah.
They just like LA calls themselves the South. They want to be the like antithesis to that. I get it, but come on, you're not.
I get your reasoning, and I think I would be on board if like we didn't have an area that's called the Central Valley, where like
sure
those things that
but the Central Valley the Central Valley starts literally directly adjacent to SF and Sacramento. Sacramento is the Central Valley, right? You don't call Sacramento NorCal. It's like the dead center of the state. It's in the valley as it goes down. Like you take the 5 from Sac to Bakersfield, no?
Yeah, but I don't know if Sac. Oh God, I'm really showing my geography. I don't know if it is in Central Valley. It might be just north of the Central Valley, but I'm not 100% sure. But I mean, like, taking the 5 down to Bakersfield, I mean, that doesn't, I mean, I take the 5 up to Ashland. That doesn't make it, you know what I mean? Like,
no, but I'm saying it's on the same, like, it's in the same.
It's in the same
run,
like,
is what I mean.
Yeah, it's in the same line. Yes. I don't know whether it's part of the quote unquote Central Valley because, it's like, it's those mountain ranges, right? Like, mountain ranges. I don't know if Sacramento's in that range, and mountains, like quote unquote, right? They're, my wife who's from Alaska would absolutely laugh at the fact that I called it a mountain range, but yeah. So I think I get you, but I think there's like a lot of cultural stuff, but I get your frustration though too because when people think of NorCal, they're not thinking of Humboldt, which is physically the most northern California you can get. They think San Francisco, which is way more south. I get your frustration on that. I call it South Central because we are in the Central Valley, and we are the most south.
Stockton. I'm looking at a map.
Oh, you are looking at
Sacramento down to Stockton, down to Los Banos, down to all that is the same, and down to Bakersfield is at the bottom of the valley.
Yes.
It is the last thing before you're out of the valley.
Yes.
Sacramento is very much in the valley. The valley actually goes all the way up to Redding.
Oh.
Like it is just the center of the state is that
Redding is Central California. Can confirm. I'm joking.
I think Redding is where you start to hit north.
Yes. No, yeah. Yeah.
But I said Redding. I meant Red Bluff, which is truly Northern California at that point. Technically, it's the last. Their claim to fame is the stupidest one of all time. You ready for this? Redding's motto when you drive in, they're like a little placard, if you go to like, as you come into towns, they have like a little like stanza to kind of epitomize their area.
Mm-hmm.
Theirs is the last metropolis, because at one point, to be a metropolis, for starters, you have to have 100,000 plus people living in an area, and like a metro area. That's what makes it a metropolis. And at one point, they did have 100,000 people living there. Not so much anymore. I think they're down to like 90 something thousand, because the place sucks to live in, because it's just hot and cold at the worst times. But that's like their claim to fame, is like their population count, which is just hilarious to me. But they are the top. They are the flip side of Bakersfield, in that they are the last like kind of city in the valley. But yeah, it stretches that far. Just wild looking at it. It's just like this.
Yeah.
It looks like if you had it at a different angle and couldn't see the ocean, it would kind of look like a golf map, honestly, with just like bunkers and sand traps on the side, and then this like long green area to like it looks like you're gonna drive, like literally hit a driver from like Reading and get down to Stockton and have to chip it into Fresno and then putt it into Bakersfield.
Par 3.5 million.
Yeah, exactly.
Good luck.
All right. To move back to the reason,
yes,
to the actual segment. Sorry for that huge tangent. When did you first get introduced and start really getting into baseball? What age were you? Were you knee high? Sitting at your first Giants game, or?
So yeah, I was always kind of like, I was always part of the baseball family, so I was introduced early on. I would say that my fanaticism, like my huge passion, started 2009, and it was a specific year because the Giants didn't make the playoffs, but they were really exciting. I mean, they had a guy named Pablo Sandoval, and that was kind of his rookie year, and he was fun to watch, electric. His name was Kung Fu Panda because his nickname was Kung Fu Panda because he would be. There was this specific play that they showed in 2008 where he was running, and he's a big guy. He was running,
Yes.
and a catcher had the ball, and he was about to tag him, but he dodged out of the way, like he jumped and like took a like I don't know, a very cartoony, like the left side of the belly just kind of like completely avoided the tag, passed the plate, but then like sprinted to like hit the plate, and then he was safe, like he
dove
didn't.
back in.
So there was that. There was a guy named Eugenio Velez who did terribly outside of 2009, but he was like a stringy, skinny lightning bolt guy who got on base a lot, so that was kind of exciting. And yeah, it was. I still remember they were down like by a run, and we were watching on the computer, and it was 2 outs and 2 on, and Pablo Sandoval hits a walk-off 3-run homer, and you're like wow, like, and that's where I remember I was like, that's my time. So 2009, I was like 15.
That's so cool.
Yeah, sorry, I really got
so
into
you started no, it's awesome, man. So you started getting into it around 14 or 15.
Yes.
Do you how, like, that's when you like, kind of drank the Kool-Aid. When
Sure.
did you first, do you remember how old you were when you like went to your first game, or like sat at home, watched it with the fam?
I mean, geez, I like 4 or 5. There's a picture of me with my uncle where I was like 6 years old, and I went to a baseball game. There's pictures of tickets where I went where I was like a toddler, like crazy, crazy. My parents would just go out to the ball. Now, of course, when it was like less expensive, right? Like we're talking about, when tickets were like,
Yeah,
I don't know, 13,
affordable.
50
You
per
didn't have to like
ticket, and
sell.
not
Yeah,
65.
no kidneys need to be sold. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you really got into it, if I'm doing the math right, you said like 2008, right? Is like when you really
2009,
started
yeah.
to 2009. That's a good time, because shortly after that you get
Yes.
championship year off, championship year off, championship.
Yes.
You get to have like the spaced out three-peat.
You get the spaced out three-peat, but you still get that uh you still kept that like, well, I was a fan like before they were
Yeah.
champion. Like it pissed me off so much when they won 2012. They won in 2012, and everyone was wearing Giant stuff,
Yeah. That
and I was
previously
like,
you hadn't seen ever
like
say a thing
stop.
about baseball. Yeah.
Yeah, like 40%. It's like, looking back at it, I'm like, yeah, they're high schoolers. They want to like,
Yeah.
if I asked them now, they'd be like, yeah, my favorite player is Tom Brady. Like, okay, sure. And LeBron's also great. Like, okay, yeah, all right. You like the
You like
huge
the winners.
superstars that
Yeah.
will, but
They're chariot chasers.
and I get it, but man, as a high school, I was like, man, I 2009 they barely didn't make it, and in 2017, it's like I'm still wearing my Giant stuff when they were wallowing. They were wallowing in. I mean, they almost lost 100 games, and I was like, yeah, I'm still,
That's still my boys out
it's
there.
more embarrassing, but but yeah, and I get that my passion is something that like people might find boring, and I totally get that aspect. For some people, I understand that like looking at someone else's crotch to instruct them on how to throw a ball, and then that person missing 70% of the time. If he's a really good player, he gets
Yeah.
out 70% of the time. I understand why that can be boring, and that the 3.5 hours, 4 hours is a lot to take in. But for me, just I don't know that sudden, the great defensive plays, the history with it, is really why I'm very passionate about baseball.
I think that's one of my favorite takeaways, and kind of like my dad, who's a pastor, has used this a lot as like a heuristic of one of those like you're doing fine kind of things, when and uses baseball as a stand-in, in that, like you're saying, great players like Hall of Famers are going to, like you have a Hall of Fame career if you bat 300 consistently. That
Yes.
is as long as you don't do bad shit, and like if you bat 300 from the get, like your whole entire career you're batting 300, 350, like 350, lock it in.
Yes.
Like 350, you're like, it's the easiest way to get in the Hall of Fame. If you bat 350 over like a 10-year plus span, you're you're in there like swim layer. It's like the easiest
I
thing in
would
the
even
world.
say like if you're averaging 350 in like 6 years, like that's
Yeah.
like people are looking at like Juan Soto, who's only been in for 4 seasons, but they're like
Hmm.
he's an average of like 302, and they're like, yeah, like one more good season, and he's a Hall of Famer, and it's like,
Yeah.
he's like, yeah,
It's that hard
yeah,
hitting a
it's
ball.
that hard hitting a round ball with a round bat.
Yeah, with hitting a sphere with a cylindrical object, as my
Hmm.
dad likes to say. But one of the fun takeaways from this is a kind of like good life lesson, is that you're like the best people at the sport, at like one of the hardest sports, miss so constantly. And then you look at life and how hard it is with all the things, and look at your success rate and realize that, yeah, you missed up on this, you didn't get that. It's like, yeah, but the best players at like one of the best sports, depending upon who's talking about it, is, they're failing probably more than you or as much, and they're the best.
Yeah.
You don't need to be the best to do well in life. You can get by batting 200. Just know that about your circumstance, and give yourself like a little bit of, baseball percentage grace. Just like, yeah, I'm batting 200 out here. I'm doing pretty good. They're gonna renew my contract if I'm batting 200.
Yeah, you might not
Yeah,
get
they'll
millions of
keep me in
dollars,
the bullpen.
but
Yeah,
you know, you're still going on by. You're still good.
yeah. It's why it is like, going back to baseball. It is wild to me that, there's so much of the game that's been figured out, and yet still, like, first, nobody's batted 400 over their season, or over a lifetime. Very few people have ever done it for a season. It's just like the amount of people that have done it for a whole entire season. I think I could read off the names without people like clicking away. It's like that short. I remember looking at the list. I think it's like, if you look at it like per season, I think it's like 40. or something like that. Throughout the history of baseball, I think there's like 40 people that have done it for like a season. Some people like Ty Cobb multiple
average?
times for a season.
Oh yeah, I think the last person to
That's
do
what it was
that
a while ago. Also,
yeah, the last person to do it was Ted Williams, who like
yep.
missed 3 years of his prime because he was in World War II. Like that's how that's what we're talking about, you know?
Yeah.
And yeah, there was someone who was close to doing that, but then the season got canceled. But
what a beat!
So
what a beat!
I know. Yeah, he was hitting, what was it, 392, and he was in the middle of a hot streak, and they were like, "Sorry, season's canceled." Rip.
Wasn't there? I mean, I know he's a contentious figure, but wasn't there a season, or maybe it was playoffs or something like that, where Barry was batting 500 or something?
Barry Bonds' career was on base more than 40% of the time, which is absolutely astounding.
Yeah.
What was it? In 2004, there's this crazy statistic where he walked more than plate appearances. So, like, when you walk, like, it doesn't count as a plate appearance. He walked more than he had plate appearances, and yet he still hit, like, 40-something home runs.
Yeah.
So when he was getting at bats, he was still mashing. It was 2004 Barry Bonds. If you're a baseball fan, you should look it up. Roids or not, it was
amazing.
Ridiculous season.
By the way, roids. As a fan of the Giants, roids.
Sure.
It's like you listen to him talk over the years and like his pitch change. It's like that's not getting older.
Well, and his frame is less. I think he should still be in the Hall because one, you have suspected people already in there. You have someone who got a ban that just got in there, and that's the thing.
Who's that?
David Ortiz. He actually got a ban early in his career, but then, didn't later. But the difference between them is that David Ortiz is likable.
Turns out that goes a long way, kids.
Yeah.
Being personable is like so much more valuable than the difference between like a bachelor's and a master's. If you're likable, like the doors that open.
Yes.
Good Lord.
So yeah.
Do you I don't think he's what's your take, since we're kind of like fell into the subject, what's your take on Pete Rose? Should be in the Hall, shouldn't be in the Hall, because he's still not in, right?
He's still not in. I think so. This is interesting. The steroids versus the betting. I think the whole gambling. I mean, there's some stuff where he might have done that as a manager, and that's illegal. Like that's the thing. That's illegal in the United States. Period. Like that's a criminal offense. He should have gone to jail. But he decided not to when he got a lifetime ban, right? Steroids weren't illegal. Business was down for Major League Baseball. And I actually seen, if you are a fan of baseball, you should watch The 10th Inning by Ken Burns, your favorite historical guy if you have 8 hours to kill. It seems like they turned a blind eye in order to get audience back because people were just hitting home runs. Like Sosa and McGuire were like part of national news every time they hit a home run. And that's nothing like what baseball had before or has since, So they kind of turned a blind eye until people were like, this isn't good. And they're like, yeah, this is bad, guys. What are you guys doing? This is bad. Like before they would have, if they found that you were using and it was like really huge amounts of evidence, they would give you a 10-game ban.
Let it get out of your system.
Yeah. 10-game suspension, which it's like, okay, if I get 10 games off, but if I use steroids to bump up my numbers so I can get a bigger contract, I'm gonna do that. Like it was totally incentivized. Anyway,
but like I think he went on record that he said he never bet against his team. Does that make a difference to you, and whether it should or shouldn't stand? Like if he's betting on his team to win every time, which is like kind of his job, like, and he just wants the action, does that make a difference, or is it still just like?
I think, is that what he like testified under oath, or is that what he's
Yeah,
saying?
I
Oh,
believe that's what he testified under oath. He's like, I never bet against my own team.
okay.
Like, I was always just like, I think we're gonna win, so I'm gonna bet on us.
And
Like
is this an
he was
Alex
he was a
Jones
degenerate, not he wasn't
where
doing it for. My understanding is he was never doing it for money. It was always for the thrill. Like he was like he had a problem.
yeah,
He wasn't like trying to make more money. Like not like that wasn't like the reason he started doing that.
sure.
It was more of just like I can't help myself.
Yeah,
But it wasn't like he never didn't like think his own team was the best team
sure.
because he was
I still
managing.
think
Why
there
would he?
should. I don't think there should be an asterisk. I think one thing that we don't really discuss about the Hall of Fame is that there's a lot of things that are represented in the Hall of Fame, but like that is a huge part of baseball. Like there's a lot of Barry Bonds stuff that's in the Hall of Fame. He's
Yep.
just not in the Hall of Fame, right? I just think like and you know that's my consolation if I ever go to Cooperstown. It's like that would be pretty cool because as a Giants fan, you know, before I was like really into it, I really liked Bonds because it was like, hey, bury a guy who's swatting home runs, you know. But I think because it was a actual like federal crime. Oh, but then you're getting into that whole. I think because it was and still continues to be a crime.
Yeah,
I think is my thing. Because then I'm going
that's
back to
fair.
like Cepeda didn't go into the Hall of Fame for a while because he had marijuana, and then he had to
Yeah.
publicly apologize for that, and then it got in. It's like, okay, jeez, what are we doing?
To return back to the passionate part of this podcast, if you could write a thesis on your love for your passion on baseball, what would the TLDR be?
I think that's a really good question. You're on
Yay! I did it again.
ice. Long title. Anyway, I think. Sorry.
That was great.
I think baseball. Uh, baseball is a generational sport that's not for everyone. I think that might be. I don't know. Like it's when you get into it, it's great and it has that sentimentality.
Hmm.
But it's not for everyone. It's a long game. It can be boring sometimes, quote unquote, right? Like,
Yeah.
but by too long didn't read it. I don't know. Um, it's a great generational sport that not everyone is into, or it's okay not to be into it. I guess.
Sure.
Yeah. Sorry, it's maybe too long, and people didn't read it. Yikes.
What would you say is the biggest misconception about baseball by the wider world?
I
Or
think
the
the
one that you
athleticism.
notice most starkly?
I think the
Athleticism?
athleticism. I think a lot of people are like, oh, you just kind of stand around, and oh, look, you have like these two people who are like 5'10" and weigh 260, right?
Hmm.
Um, but it's like, okay, but they have great hand eye and they have crazy power. Like that's the reason why they're still up here. You have to be very athletic and very physically fit in order to stay there. I mean,
Hmm.
the fact that pitchers go out every fifth day, um, you know, so they're not playing every day, but like a lot of them are really have to be physically fit in order to throw a ball 95
Yeah.
miles an hour. You know, it's in order to have a sprint speed and to be at a distance of like 45 feet in like 8 seconds, you really have to.
Damn. Yeah,
Yeah,
you have to
it's
boogie.
you have to boogie. Like it's so I
It's
would
not. It's
say
not like. So you're saying it's not like golf?
it's not like golf. And I think people are like, well, they're just standing around and it's like I mean, I think there's a difference between
Yes, but
yes,
Yeah, they're not lounging, they are standing
I
in wait.
I think I think there's a difference between standing around and anticipating. And
Yeah,
you had to
that's a great way
anticipate
of
a
putting it.
ball that might go 111 miles at you and catch it, and you're at third base, and it's like I don't know. I love this new. There's a new thing called Statcast where it tells you like this is how fast the ball was, and at this
Hmm.
angle, and it's like you see a third baseman, you're like, wow, that was kind of fast, and you're like, yeah, exit velo was like 108 miles per hour. And I'm like, how the fuck did you like? It's 60
Yeah.
feet away, and they were able to catch it. Like how what? Like so,
Yeah.
I don't know.
It's almost better, or it's almost more impressive, like the way you're saying this, and the more I think about it, than like a lot of other games where the play is scripted and you know you're doing X. Because when you're waiting anticipation, you have to focus on something that's unlikely to happen, but you still have to be keenly aware of it. So you're using all this energy for something that doesn't necessarily have a payoff. Like if you're in the outfield, watching a hit and being like, "Is it coming to me? Where do I need to haul ass to?" And then it doesn't, or it goes foul or whatever like that. You're doing a play that has no output. Like at least when you're defending on the line in football, you're interacting with somebody, and so
Everyone's
there's like
interacting. Yeah,
a kind of, yeah. There's, as much as it is harder, at least like mentally you are accomplishing something. When you're doing that in baseball and then you run and realize you didn't have to, it's gotta suck a bit. Like it has to be like a mental tax of like, I did this for nothing.
yeah,
I put myself in the right spot, but also I did jack shit. Like it
yeah.
went
But you're getting
foul.
paid tens of thousands of dollars if you're
Yeah,
that
yeah,
good.
you're
Yeah,
getting paid tens of thousands, but like that mental thing of doing a nothing, that you expended all this effort, all this, attention and all this output to do, you know, to do nothing. For, the camera wasn't even on you, nobody noticed,
yeah,
and you're just like, you just did like a 50-meter dash and then you have to go stand and be ready to do another one that may or may not matter.
yeah. And I think what people,
And if you get it wrong and you don't move and it did matter, or if you move in the wrong direction, you just get drugged through the mud for being an idiot.
yeah,
It's like there's so much pressure on the
yes,
circumstances.
exactly. And I think what a lot of people who uh, go against baseball for what they is that they look at the other eight people and they're like, well, it's boring. They're just standing around. It's like, well, look at the guy that like, and sometimes there's not like this great play. Like they're positioned well and they just like mosey on over like 3 feet to the right and they catch a ball. And like that, like sometimes that
I
happens. But
mean,
when great plays happen, that's good. But I think a lot of people like that. I think a good comparison is like chess. I feel like basketball and like football are more like chess, where it's like you're really going against like there's wits, like you have certain plays
mm-hmm,
in mind, and you're really seeing two people go head to head. Like you're seeing one team versus another, and that's
sure,
like almost less so because it's one batter against
yeah.
nine other people, and maybe you have
David versus Goliath
yes, and
every
it's like
3 times
hopefully
ending at least.
the ball like doesn't get caught or like you don't strike out, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it is a different concept, but so I completely understand why people find it boring. I don't. I find it as anticipation. But I'm not.
It's kind of like another one of those good life metaphors, though, you can draw from it. Like so much of life is doing the same thing, waiting, watching, being attentive, not having the ball come your way, not having any efforts if you do matter. But if you aren't ready for that moment, you're going to miss out on so much, whether it might be, I don't want to say destiny, but like, that person that was probably best suited for you cosmically to, you didn't think to ask her out, you weren't paying attention, you missed out on
Mhm.
that tremendous opportunity. Or at work, you didn't see the writing on the wall. You didn't put in the work that probably wasn't going to matter. That might have gotten you attention. What might have gotten you a raise. Might have gotten you a different position. The accolades necessary, the pay, but whatever. Like so much of that is kind of like life, where you're constantly doing nothing. You're doing the same thing. You're waiting, watching. You're stressed out, but nothing's coming of it. And then you have your one moment to shine. And if you weren't ready to sprint those 50 yards and like do a diving catch, it's like you're not going to get,
Yeah.
you're not going to get rehired. You're not going to get renewed. You're not going to get, moved up.
Yeah.
Do you have a favorite non-obvious aspect of baseball that you'd love to learn us?
I love scorekeeping. And again, it's not for everyone. I totally understand that. I love keeping track of like, oh, that's a strike. Like, let me notify it. Oh, this is happening, and all that. It really helps me focus on baseball because I think that's another thing is I think you can easily lose focus on what's happening. I remember there was uh, we had really good seats like about I want to say like about a month ago, and the people right in front of us. I mean, great area, and something happened where they got a single, but they weren't really paying attention. They thought maybe a run scored, so they were like standing up and going, "Woo, yeah!" Like it's like, okay, it was just a hit. Like, yeah, he's on base. Good for you, you know. But I love scorekeeping because it keeps you focused, and for me, it leaves this a trail of what you have. It's almost kind of it's a written record of what you've gone to. I've started doing this since 2018, and I just love kind of looking back at certain games that we went to and being like, oh yeah, like I went to a game where the Giants were losing 2-1 in the top of the ninth at Dodger Stadium, and then they won 5-2. They scored 4 runs in the top of the ninth inning, and
Oof.
that was amazing. And just like looking at my scorecard and being like, "Oh yeah, he got a single here, and this happened, and their bullpen
Yeah,
wasn't
it's like
good
an interactive
because
history book.
yeah,
You get to be like the stenographer of the game.
yes, exactly." And for me, it's this is something that's passionate enough to where it's like when I grow up, hopefully, you know, my kids, if they like baseball and they like going to baseball, I don't want to force it on them,
They're just gonna
obviously.
look at you like a huge nerd.
Yes.
I'm gonna cut to the chase. Regardless of whether they like it or not, when you show this to them, they're like, "Jeez, Dad."
Well, yes, but it's more like I hope when I show it to them that they will be a part of the scorekeeping.
Oh, for
And
sure, for
so
sure.
then what'll be great is like I have signatures like from my dad and from my cousin. And hopefully that
Aw.
gets passed down to where they could be like, well, this was my grandpa Rob who
Mm-hmm.
who was at this game. And it's something that um can be carried down to. That's my kind of hope for it. I understand that it's pieces of paper, and some people might find it waste, you know, uh, useless. But for me, it's
Nah.
part of that like baseball like
Yeah, no, it's
sentimentality of like
beautiful.
of passing.
You're engaging with your sport in like one of the only ways you can, and also like
Mhm.
taking with you like written memories. It's almost like it's the equivalent of, somebody writing reviews on a movie they saw, or journaling a hike, or like taking pictures on, and putting this thing to Instagram when they go, sightseeing or something like that. It's the same relative equivalent.
Yeah.
Do you feel like it takes you out of the game though, or do you think it enhances
No,
your
it
experience?
enhances definitely.
It
It
enhances it.
it
Okay.
really. I'm like, okay, 1-1 count. Like this pitch is really important because like a 2-1 count. Like the difference between a 1-2 count and a 2-1 count, like the average goes like a 1-2 count, like the average is around like 116, and
Hmm.
a 2-1 count is like around like 310. So it's like so it's like it keeps me like, okay, this is a 1-1 count, like what's gonna happen here, like it really enhances it for me.
Mm,
And it helps me keep focus on the game.
that's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, before we move on to the preposterous segment, I gotta ask, and maybe I can be preposterous before we move on. What is the most important position in baseball, or do you think there is one?
No, I think I do. I think there is. I think right now it's definitely I think catcher. I think he calls the games. He calls the pitch selection sometimes. I was close to saying pitcher because pitcher.
I mean, that was the right answer, but
Yeah. I mean, that's fair. I mean, the pitcher by himself on a really good. I mean, there was a really good pitcher who threw. I mean, it was never happened again, but someone threw 20 strikeouts, and you're like, okay, 7 of these people on the field are useless. It's the pitcher
yeah,
throwing to the catcher and getting 20 outs out of 27.
I kind of see the pitcher and catcher dynamic. I hadn't thought of it, but that is very important. I kind of see the pitcher and catcher dynamic like the difference between a race car driver and the pit crew.
Yes, yeah. But I think there is definitely one that holds up the trophy that gets all the glamour, but can't do it without the other. I think that is a good. Yeah.
But I mean, if the pitcher is really good, the catcher gets to advise the pitches, but he doesn't get to choose the pitches.
Yes,
it's kind of like the veto, the ultimate veto power.
The ultimate veto power is the pitcher, and you would
the pitcher can stand there for 5 minutes and just shake his head until the catcher figures his shit out.
Well, and if you were to say like, would you rather have a Hall of Fame catcher or a Hall of Fame pitcher? It's Hall of Fame pitcher, 100 times that.
Yeah,
like that's you need that domination. You need the So yes.
If you like you said, is a perfect way of saying it. Like if nobody's on base, the catcher can literally not catch the ball and it doesn't matter, right? Like if he pitches, it goes through, it's a strike, and then the catcher just can't seem to understand how holding a ball works, but he can throw it back to him. It doesn't matter. It's going to be the funniest game to watch. It'd be like the best no-hitter is him just like constantly bobbling the catch. But it's like, it doesn't matter.
Yes.
Yeah.
Although what happens though is sometimes when a catcher doesn't catch a pitch like well, the umpire will call it a ball. Because it's like, oh, well, yeah, it was outside the zone. Yeah, because, well...
That's hilarious.
Yes, it's really bad. Like, sometimes it'll be, like, there, but then, like, the ball slips out, so then the umpire just thinks, oh, like, that was way too outside. Okay.
That's funny.
So, yeah.
Well, thank you for answering that age-old question.
Yes.
Now, to move on for something far less... it's passionate in a different region, if you will. Ian, what is your preposterous peeve that you've brought with you today?
My preposterous peeve is unclicked pens. Now, I grew up in a household. I love my mom. I love my dad. We had about... I hate you. We have about 3,500 pens that just have no caps, right? And so sometimes when we get clicked pens, my parents and everyone else will click the pen, write something, and then just leave it there. And I'm like, why are we doing this? You can unclick it. You can save ink and money and my sanity. So then what I would do is every time I would see an unclicked pen, I would casually pick it up. And depending on where they are, I might even walk to where they are in the room. I will look at them. And I will unclick the pen. And then walk back. And put it back to where it was.
This would be the best prank, is to get 3 people in a room sitting equal distance and each one of them with a pen, and just get you to like just click it and leave it there till you run over, and at the last minute they unclick it and then somebody else across the room clicks their pen.
Well, that's the thing. It's like they have to like not like for me. It's like if you unclick a pen and you're still there, I still think okay, you still might use it. But for me, it's like when you leave the vicinity, like you are done. You're done, right? You are done with your workspace, and your pen is still fucking out. Like it's ridiculous. Don't do that. It bothers me a lot. I
had no idea.
Yes.
I couldn't tell from the way you're talking about it right now that it is in any way
big sound effect.
When did you first notice this being a problem? Was there like an inciting incident, that kind of changed you forever?
I think it was college. I think just like being home and then just like seeing pens that were unclicked. And I think just being in an environment for so long. Like throughout, living, that it's like, okay, yeah, we have a bunch of dried up pens. And then I go to college and I'm like, wait, that doesn't have to exist.
It doesn't have to be like this.
You can buy a bag of pens, and then like a year later, they still work if you like actually doing, actually taking care of it. And so then like when I would come home and I would just see all these, and it's also, I think it also started with like a stressful thing, like, oh, I need to write something down, and then like 5 pens don't work, and then I'm like, oh, here's a here's a click pen that's still out. I wonder if
Mm-hmm.
this works. Oh, no? Great. Like, I'm glad this. I think it's, for me, it's like, here's a mechanism to save on ink. And everyone's like,
Yeah.
okay, nope. Like,
Couldn't be bothered to
yeah,
press my
couldn't
thumb
be
down one more
bothered.
time.
Hey, this stoplight's supposed to help you with traffic and everything. Okay, nope, I'm gonna die. Like, yeah,
Yeah.
I'm just gonna keep going.
What? Which bothers you more, an unclicked pen or an uncapped pen?
Unclicked because it's right there. I feel like if you lose a cap, sometimes that
Yeah, yeah.
happens.
No, I'm talking
Um,
where the cap is like right next to it. It's like they just like left it out.
oh, I still think unclicked. I still think unclicked is my, because it's just one action. You know,
Yeah.
you don't even have to use your other hand.
It was so easy. It was right there in your hand a second ago.
Oh God, yeah. So yeah, that's
Do you have
fine.
do you have a story for us? A anecdote perhaps where this peeve shined the brightest?
I think my wife and I got into a bit of a heated discussion because
A fight, one might say.
it was a very warm day, and she doesn't do well with heat, like, and I get it. Well, then it's like 80 like inside your house. Like, I kind of
Ugh.
get uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Um but she gets a little more angry at certain things, and I think it was just one of those times where she was just like not having it, and it was very warm, and there was an unclicked pen, and I was also not having it, and um I I unclicked it in front of her, and
Hold on. Are we talking like you picked it up, walked it
I
in front of her,
picked it
unclicked
up.
it,
I
and then
looked,
said,
and here's what I do when I do that. I
"Oh,
do this all the time. I full body turn. I'm like, this is the
nice."
amount of effort that I'm putting in for the lack of effort that you have done.
See how
See
easy
how
this
easy it
was?
is,
You
and
too could do this.
yeah, that did not
That didn't go well.
that didn't go well.
Surprise spoiler.
Yeah. So obviously, I apologized later, but I did say, that's one of my things.
He wrote an apology, then unclicked the pen and
I
handed her the apology.
and then I took a picture, printed it, and put it with the note. P.S. This is how you unclick a pen. Um,
Wrote the steps out.
yeah, I wrote the steps
like
out.
legal
Yeah, no,
pad, like just say
absolutely not.
for future edification.
Yeah.
Uh,
So yeah, that happened, and I understand why she was not in the best moods, and I understand. And it's like, I think you understand this, like, when you have someone and you know their ticks, and you know when it's not a good time to approach,
yeah.
and maybe they've overstepped some of like their bounds, but they're like in a mood right now where it's like, okay, I don't care about that right now. You just need to, you need to cool down the area,
Hmm.
and all of that. And I knew that. I looked at that unclicked pen, and all of that was out the window, and I just had to show it. So yeah, it was funny because I was like, I thought my original pet peeve, another pet peeve of mine, is when people park incorrectly. Like,
Hmm.
those like grocery stores where it's like there's one way to park in.
Yeah, it's got like the angling to
Yeah,
it.
the angle to it. But like some people, when it's regular, they like to like drive ahead to the other parking spot because it's like, oh hey, I can just go out now. But when they do that angled, that doesn't fucking work because you're now going against the grain. Like your car is headed towards the other side of traffic. So now you have to do this weird like thing. Anyway, that's another pet peeve of mine that I can also get into. But I talked about that, and then my wife is like, "It's unclicked pens," and I'm like, "Oh my god, you're absolutely right. It is unclicked pens." And when or we were actually messaging this too, and you were like, "Well, which ones would your family and loved ones say?" And I'm like, "Okay, I know the answer." They've given me so much shit for this.
And rightfully so,
so
and
much
lovingly
sugar
as well. Yeah, so much sugar. Well, with that awesome tidbit and that tremendous peeve, we're going to head to our second ad break. But don't go anywhere, because when we get back, Ian is going to enter the lightning round. Do you ever find yourself doing a mundane activity with nothing to keep you from gouging your eyes out or sticking a pencil through one ear and out the other? Uh-huh. Well, then perhaps I could introduce you to music. Music comes in a variety of different types, flavors, and colors. Theorists say that it's the best thing to introduce to your life since food. So go out and get some and make your life just a little bit more bearable. And we are back. Ian, are you ready to enter the lightning round?
Lightning round?
There's a lot of lightning, but I think I'm ready.
Ready to bring the thunder? All right. Well, buckle up your seatbelts and keep your arms inside the ride at all times. Ian, is there a price for you to give up your passion forever?
No.
Make the food or do the dishes?
Make the food.
Are soups smoothies?
Absolutely not.
Did you ever cheat on a test in school?
I am human. Yes.
Are you out of touch, or is it the children who are wrong?
Every generation has their thing. I'm out of touch.
Would you rather have your inner monologue sound like Gilbert Gottfried or Fran Drescher?
Gilbert Gottfried.
Would you rather read the cue cards while wearing the crown or live in a hovel and speak your mind?
Speak my mind. Fuck the crown.
Do you create your own thoughts or do you just listen to them?
I listen.
You're having the best day of your life. What happens next? Another amazing thing or something terrible?
Amazing.
Pineapple on pizza or fist fight?
Throwing the pineapple on pizza at the person I would fist fight. I'm against violence, so I'll throw the pizza.
Here's the thing you like. You come across a stranger just struck by a car. Their dying breath is this. This is very important. Please tell my wife. She's a dirty harlot. Ooh. Do you or do you not tell their wife?
No.
Is professional wrestling cool or lame?
It's dangerously cool.
Courtesy flush or light a candle?
Courtesy flush.
Can I have your pickle?
Absolutely.
Assuming there are no health or global effects to worry about, would you rather it always be dark or always be light?
Light.
Would you rather be completely made of eyeballs from the neck down, no eyelids, or be a remote-controlled Tonka truck from the neck down? You have the remote, but lack the appendages to use it, so you must gift it to another individual.
Absolutely Tonka.
Brussels sprout flavored Mountain Dew or day-old lasagna milkshake?
Brussels sprout.
Is the universe finite?
Sure.
Does everything happen for a reason?
No.
Could you eat 37 of your favorite food for $5,000 in a 1 hour time limit?
1 hour? Yes.
Congratulations, you've survived the lightning round.
What do I get?
Well, before we go on to what you get, we're going to move on to what you just said. Because I, like many listeners at home, would like to now know, what is your favorite food?
Gosh, it's really hard. I would say that one of my favorites is jambalaya, which would be impossible to eat 37 things of that. But I would say another one of my favorite things is the Minnie Mouse chocolate chip cookies are absolutely one of my favorite things of all time. When I know anyone who goes to Disneyland, I give them $60 and I say,
Jeez.
buy the Minnie Mouse chocolate chip cookies. And I freeze them and I enjoy them.
Nice.
So I can probably eat 30. They're gigantic. So I would.
But you're gonna try.
I would try for $5,000. Yeah.
Come on, baby.
Pour that straight into my loans.
Moving on to your prize. What lightning round question would you like to ask me, and in turn be asked of future guests?
So since I'm a teacher, I thought I would have a little teacher spin. So it's, would you rather have 40 students to teach in 5 months, or would you rather have 20 students, which is closer to class average, for 10 months?
All right, so there's one thing I need to know before I answer.
Yes.
Is the payment the same per month, or is it the same per output? Like if I do the 40 students for 5 months and then I have 5 months off or can run it back, am I getting paid the same amount?
We say that you are salaried like a regular teacher, so it's the same for a year. For a year, it's the same.
Oh, then I'm doing 20 students for 10 months.
Okay.
Like, I mean, why burn yourself if you're going to get paid less? Also, 40 students, I think.
No. You will be paid the same amount. Sorry, that's what I mean. Like sorry.
Oh,
you,
okay.
you
So
have
the payment, the output's
year,
the same.
You have the contract.
So then I have an extra 5 months off. Give me 40 students.
Okay.
I'll take 5 months of just like, either running it back, doing it somewhere else, or doing something else, and then 10 months. I probably change my answer after like the 5 month period. Be like, actually, hold on, I made an egregious mistake, but I don't think I could pass up 5 months of like effectively like free money. Yeah. For more monkeys to manage in their cages. What about you? What's your what would be your preference?
I think I would do the 10 months just because we have essentially 10 months, right? Like there's a few days here or there. We have essentially 10 months. We get out mid-June, we come back mid-August, right? So I'm already used to like a small class size because I'm intervention. So I have like 4 kids for a half an hour, and then I get another 4 kids, right? So I cycle through. So I'd much rather have, I feel like with 40 kids, I would need to come in at like 6 a.m. and I would need to leave at like 7 p.m. in order to be an effective teacher. Like, and it would pay me not to be. So yeah, I think I would go 10 months.
That's very caring. I'm glad you're the teacher and I'm not currently. Putting the kids first. Respect.
Yeah.
All right, man. As we come to a close here, anything you want to plug, shout out, places people can find you or your content?
Yeah, I'd like to shout out my dad and my wife and anyone else who I've referenced through this podcast. I didn't really ask beforehand. Oopsie. But I think how I portrayed them and what I've said, I think is totally fine. But shout outs to them.
All right. You got any of those friends, family, or other persons in your life you'd like to nominate to come on this podcast so they too can suffer as you have today?
So I think one, I don't know if you've interviewed your brother yet, but that would be...
I have.
Oh, you have? Okay. So I think
he was like my third or fourth guest. He was in the first like 6, I think.
So I need to go back, and because that would be interesting that would be a fun listen to. I would say
it was early on, so it was a lot rusty, but it was a very fun one. I would recommend it.
Good. I would say one that I would recommend. Of course, you would have to do this next summer because that's when he's next available. Is my brother? I think he has. I don't know. He's a great, person to discuss with and funny. And, yeah. I don't know. He has a lot of, I think, funny stuff to say, but he's also like very knowledgeable and political, and it can get, I don't know, it would be very, I would really like to listen to that podcast. So
well, let's see if we can make that happen. Yeah. Brendan, I'm coming for you, bud.
There you go.
Also, if you want to listen to the said teased episode where I interviewed my brother, it's season 1, episode 4, novel teasing time warps with the Seersucker proxy.
Oh, I wonder what my episode title will be.
Oh, I'll send it to you. It's gonna be a mouthful. Don't you worry.
Okay, Mr. Bewley's Opus.
I don't know about that.
Yeah.
not going to give you that much of an accolade.
That's
I think
fair.
to start off.
It was more like the reference that we made earlier in this podcast.
No, I get you.
Sure.
Cool, man. Well, thank you, Ian, for being my guest today, and a special thanks to my editor, Richard Ashford, and my composer, Joshua Gibbons. And thank you. Yes, you listening at home or wherever you found time to appreciate this. Time is the most precious commodity we have, and I appreciate you spending yours with us. And if you enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe, like, or just share it with a friend. Every little bit helps. Or if you already have and are out of episodes to listen to, don't worry. We put out a new episode every Monday at midnight on SoundCloud, YouTube, Spotify, and iTunes at Passionate People and Preposterous Peeps podcast. And a very special thanks are due to our patrons, Sibel Yellow. If you'd like to join said illustrious ranks and have your name read aloud, just head over to patreon.com/Passionate People and Preposterous Peeps podcast. And remember, folks, if Jandis and Candace go with Mike and Ike to hike and bike, how many tomatoes and potatoes will it take for you to realize this limerick is just a trick?